So last month in June, I was actually able to get the Yamaha YZF600R running again. But even though I got it running, I began to think and I began to feel that, the Yamaha, even fixed, it wouldn't be worth that much. There's a lot left to go. There's potential misalignment of the frame. And overall, with the wreck, I just have a lot of bad memories associated with that motorcycle. And I've been working my software developer job for the last 6 months, and I decided, hey, maybe it's time I treat myself and I go and get my dream bike. And this is it. This is a 2019 Honda CB650R. This is before they started doing the E-clutch, but this is that newer style. I liked my CB300F, that was my first motorcycle, and all I really wanted was something bigger. And after having this for a couple weeks now, this basically confirms what I had been feeling all this time about the CB300F and the CB650R. It really is just a larger, heavier, and more powerful counterpart to the CB300F, a more premium option, full-size option. It's a naked style, so no fairing or minimal bodywork. You do have these air intakes up here. It's actually even less fairing than the CB300F. The engine is a 649cc, 4-stroke, fuel-injected, liquid-cooled engine. Pretty standard and modern engine. It's got the standard 6-speed transmission that you'd find in most bikes nowadays. And that clutch, although it's not the E-clutch like the newer models, it does have that slipper clutch, which none of my previous motorcycles had. And I will say, I am liking that. It makes it a little bit easier to actually actuate it using your left hand, and it's easier to slip at low speeds when you're trying to maneuver. You don't have to rev quite as high. This one is equipped with traction control and ABS. I've already gotten caught in the rain a couple times on this motorcycle, and I haven't had to use any of those features just yet. No ABS, no traction control. Didn't really run into any situations where those would engage, but they are nice to have. But I am loving this motorcycle. I love the way it looks. I love the way it sounds. It has this massive muffler, but I think that the stock exhaust, it looks really good. I think it sounds really good. The note is really good, and it's pretty quiet when you're idling, which I do like. Those headers are beautiful, the way that they come up from the front of the engine, and they're all parallel and they flow down into a 4-to-1 collector before going into the muffler. Those headers are just really beautiful. Those are one of the standout features of this motorcycle. I'm glad that they made the headers such a prominent visual feature of this motorcycle. Something that they really took into account when they were designing them visually, rather than just hiding the headers, hiding the manifold behind a fairing or some other bodywork. Honestly, with this round front headlight, and these headers and being an inline-four cylinder and just the general posture of this motorcycle, I would almost describe this as being a 21st century UJM. So UJM meaning Universal Japanese Motorcycle. That was like the older style of the older Hondas and the older Yamahas when they were first coming to the United States and internationally. They just looked a certain way, and you sat on them, it was more upright than like an American cruiser. This is slightly more sporty and aggressive, but I would say that this is that in spirit. Now moving on to actual performance, I'd say handling is pretty good. The front end does feel kind of floaty compared to the YZF600R or even the CB300F. I think it's something that I'm going to get used to over time. It just doesn't feel as planted or as secure as with other two motorcycles, believe it or not. I think it's just something that I'm going to have to get used to over time. Acceleration wise, I've opened it up on some highway on-ramps and some highways accelerating up to speed. No complaints there. This is the fastest motorcycle I've ridden, even faster than the YZF600R. The YZF does have higher horsepower and a higher redline, despite being a lower number of cc's and still makes more power. And that's because of the lighter weight, things are able to move slightly faster. That contributes to the higher redline. The redline on this is 12,500. And the reason why I say this feels faster than the YZF is the YZF, the carbs were never tuned for Colorado. You would never be able to get it wide open without it stumbling over itself. And that's what I love about getting something so much more modern like this is fuel injected. So it's always in tune. It's always doing a closed loop with the air intake, a MAF or a MAP sensor. I'm not sure which it is on this. And then you do have an O2 sensor. So it's doing that closed loop tuning and adjustment. This will operate the same way it does here in downtown Denver at 5280 feet. And then if I go up in the mountains, it's going to adjust for that altitude. Whereas even if I finally got the YZF jetted properly for the city in Denver, as soon as I decide to cruise up to the mountains with my buddies, bang, it's going to be rich, it's going to be out of tune. Just going up those extra 2,000 feet, it's going to put it right back out of tune, and it's going to be running rich again. There's nothing wrong with computers, the issue is too much computer. And I feel like this, even though it has ABS and traction control, this is the right amount of computer. But moving beyond the bike, because I love the bike, that's very clear, to something that's arguably even more important than motorcycle you're riding, and that's the gear that you're putting on your body. So I took that last accident in my office clothes. instantly those pants were ruined. They provided no abrasion protection, and then once the pants were gone, that was my body. You know, the terms road rash and abrasions, they don't really describe what it is. The term that I've heard people say, and the term that I would agree with, is that you literally become a meat crayon, grinding your body against the ground until there's nothing left. Unfortunately, I walked away with no concussion and no fractures, but the abrasions on my knee were deep, and I am still wrapping my knee even 4 months after this accident. It takes a while for these tissues to heal, especially your skin, when you've ended up scraping that many layers of your skin off. And to be honest, I never want to go through that again. So I've upgraded. The Tsuchishi Strata 3, I hit a curb with my head, no concussion. That helmet worked, but that's not the best helmet out there. I've since upgraded to a Shoei R1400 helmet. I bought a darker visor, but I've been running the clear one. To be honest, I prefer the clear visor because there's more visibility. I've got a new Cardo Pack Edge I installed on here, and then an Osmo Action 6 to replace the ancient GoPro. My gloves were actually thrown in with the motorcycle. These are an Alpine Star glove, and they're not full gauntlet, and they don't go up beyond the wrist that far. I like these because they don't interfere with my Apple Watch, but these are Alpine Stars. I don't know exactly what model number they are. They're comfortable, they're already broken in, and they have that protection on the knuckles, which is very important that I found from the accident. And then this jacket is the Klim Marrakesh motorcycle jacket. It has padding in the elbows and in the shoulders. My backpack that I was wearing and just the nature of the jacket that I was wearing ended up saving my shoulder. However, the buttons did pop open and I had an abrasion on my arm as well. This uses zippers, so this won't be able to hike up as much if I'm sliding on it. And it's got padding in all the right places with armor in the back. So if I'm not wearing a backpack, I'm gonna have some padding back there. And then my jeans that I'm wearing, these are Reax jeans. They have CE armor in the knees that I've adjusted up a little bit. And then these boots are the Klim Blackjack leather boots. They are more rigid leather around the toe box, and they have a rigid rubber bottom. They're heavier duty than what I was wearing. Now, the gear that I've chosen here, I've picked specifically to mitigate the kind of accident that I had and the kind of injuries that I experienced. These pads in my pants and in my jacket are not as good as some other armor. And I understand if I get into a high side accident, I get flung off the motorcycle, or if a car hits me, or if I get flung off and then the motorcycle later hits me, or if I go into a guardrail or off a cliff or something, those injuries are probably not going to get mitigated by what I'm wearing now. But even going further than having a sorted modern motorcycle with electronic safety assistance features and having protection over my body, the real thing is going to be the skill. And I've taken to going to parking lots and practicing low speed maneuvers and emergency braking and other maneuvers in a controlled environment. That way I have a more developed muscle memory to call upon when it's time to use those skills. That crash keeps replaying in my mind, and I keep asking myself, I keep analyzing, what could I have done better to either avoid the accident or make it not as bad as it was? What could I have done in that moment to where things would have turned out better? That's what I am asking myself, and that is what I'm slowly answering. In short, I've got a great new motorcycle, some great gear, and a Guardian Bell. Thank you for watching this video until the very end. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the motorcycle, if you own one of these, or other similar motorcycles, other makes and models. Get subscribed for more car, tech, motorcycle, and life content. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.